It is estimated that we come in contact with 80,000 people in our lifetime. Of all of those people, it is exceptionally rare to come across somebody that is the epitome of a good person. Someone who gives and gives, and not because they're looking for recognition, but because that's just who they are. Through their actions, they impact and shape the lives of those around them without even realizing. If you're lucky, you'll come in contact with them more than once. But if you're as fortunate as me, you'll be born into their family.
My husband, Lou, has been so supportive and wonderful to me all my life.
What an amazing man he is, right? We are so fortunate that we've had him in all of our lives.
He gives from his heart, never not expecting it to come back.
The want to give, I think, came from this beautiful man that we're talking about, by his example.
He is actually the meaning of loving and caring and total compassion for family.
I really enjoy being there and being part of that.
If you want to be anything like him, you have some pretty big shoes to fill. And quite honestly, I think Grandpa has unfillable shoes.
I've had two grandparents. They both passed away early. So later on in life, being where I am now, he's filled that role immensely.
This is all because of Papa Lou, because of Moose, because of my dad.
It really all came from Dad. It all came from my father.
It didn't occur to me until like the other day. Holy cow. He did all of that.
He built this. Like, this is what he built, and it's beautiful.
Papa is just the ultimate example.
I've always looked up to him.
Lots of guidance there, and a lot I learned through his stories that I'll just continue to carry with me forever.
Growing up around Papa, it was just those little things that kind of stuck with me.
He always made you feel comfortable.
That was always something I enjoyed.
It makes me proud. I'm a proud granddaughter of Lou Cecchini.
The legacy he has left is insane, and I appreciate everything that he has done for me and my family.
My name is Lou V. Cecchini. The V is for Vincent. I was born in New York City, actually, in 1938. I actually grew up in the city, which we would call the Upper East Side, which is really Harlem. We lived there just for a short time. We moved out in 1947, and Dad seen a way to get us out of the city and bring us into the country. He had a nice little colonial built. He had it built himself, and I remember visiting it every weekend and seeing how it was coming. When we first moved there, I had a big problem going to school. Moving into a whole nother school district, they were probably ahead, so I was starting to have some problems. I just wasn't doing. I wasn't making friends, and every morning I get halfway to school and I turn around and come home because I didn't feel well. And finally, of course, once I got home, I felt great. So finally, Mom said to me, well, listen, if you don't make it to school, you're not going out and playing. So, of course, I said, I can't go out and play, so I better start making it in school and staying in school. So I did. I didn't make a lot of friends, but I started. And I had, just a couple of friends. But everybody in that class, they were all real good friends of each other's because they've been together for 3 or 4 years already. And I'm new. And you always feel like the newbie. You're always, like you don't fit in. As I was in that school now, I'm in that school 3 years, let's say, 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th, maybe closer to 4. And naturally now you're starting to make friends. People are moving on. A couple of newbies are coming in. So now you're not the oddball on the block. Then naturally just getting comfortable. Now we graduate, we all move out. And from there now, you start your 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th. Now you got your high school all planned out. And so I got into Roosevelt. Kind of a classy school, and all the kids that went there came from better neighborhoods. But again, new school, newbie, wasn't doing good. And I flunked out of Roosevelt. Mom said, you know what, you're not. And even my guidance counselor and teachers would say, you know, he's not cut for this school. He's a tradesman. He's a blue collar. There's no doubt about it. So I changed from Roosevelt, from this high-class school, but now I go to Saunders Trades and Technical High School, real old boys school. You have your great kids, and you got your criminals. I took on auto mechanics, and now auto mechanic, now Saunders is not 35, 40 kids. You got maybe 15, 20 kids in the trade school, in a class. I really, I made a name for myself there. Wasn't a bad guy, but I was well known. I wasn't no scholar. I was passing my grades, barely. And I had 2 women teachers, and the rest were men. And I used to try to smooth the women teachers with, any kind of wash their car or clean their, anything like that. Now, I'm in an all-boys school. Up the road was an all-girls school. And that was a clerical school where they did sewing and baking and everything else. So Saunders had all boys. Commerce had all girls. Well, of course, the teacher needed parts when we were working on a car. So I'd say, Louie, come over here. And I'd say, yes, sir. Yes, go down to Academy Auto and pick up this part for us. Well, it was during school. And my car was there. Well, I would go get the part, but I would end up going to the girls' school. And, hanging out there for a while. I can remember one time they were changing classes, and I went and changed classes and went and sat in the class. And when they called the roll, of course, the teacher didn't know I was there, so I never said anything. And everybody's in there chuckling because it's a guy in the girls' school. And finally she caught me and said, what are you doing? And it was a big joke. I got caught, and they threw me out of school, and I went back to my school with the part. Then nobody knew the difference. I loved mechanical work, and I got good grades. But my English, my math, just squeezing through. And one of my teachers, I think it was my English teacher, but I'm not sure, had me on the line. And I went and talked to her. I said, listen, I really want to get out of school, but you're the only everybody else is passing me, not flying colors, but passing me. You're on the line. Without your passing grade, I'm not going to graduate. And she was nice enough and gave me a passing grade. And I graduated, and that was in June of 1957. Now, mind you, I've already met my wife, Arlene. It was in July of 56. And how I met Arlene was in a gas station. My job was pumping gas in the afternoons after school and on weekends.
I used to go to the gas station every Saturday. And because it was a weekend, I would have my hair in these big bazooka curlers.
She'd always have these curlers in her hair.
Lou would come and pump my gas.
In those days, you went out, everybody got gas. You weren't pumping your own.
And after a while, he's wiped my windshield. He's wiping it inside and out.
And there was a song on the radio that she had playing, and she had her girlfriends in the car. One was her sister, one was her cousin. They were teenage girls. And the song was A Casual Look. And that was playing, and I liked the song. I looked at her, and she looked at me, and kind of something clicked.
And I was with my sister, and I said to her, he's going to ask me out. And she said, will you go out with him? I says, who knows, I might end up marrying him. And I did.
She said, who knows, I may end up marrying the guy. Which she did.
When I met him, he told me he was 18. And I said I was 19. So it was different. And then we're out with his sister one night, whose name is Arlene, and she let it slip that he was only 17. So that night I says, you're only 17? He says, does it matter what age? Does it matter? I said, no, because I'm 20. I had just turned 20.
We always got stuck on that.
And I remember asking him when he asked me out, I said, do you have a car? He says, yes, I do.
And the first thing that always cracked me up is that, do you have a car? I said, well, I'm asking you out. What do you think we're going to walk?
Because the last date I had was on a bus.
And she said, well, I don't know. Maybe he's going to ask me out. We got to go for a bus. So, of course, I have a car.
He had a brand new car.
In 1956, Grandma had, her dad had passed away, left her a few dollars. So, I don't know, for whatever reason, whether we complained a lot or whatever, she bought me a brand new Ford. We went out that night. We went just for a ride, just for ice cream.
And we were together every night since.
When you're coming into your teen years, now you're doing things with your family, and I wasn't. I was working on my car, seeing my girlfriend, and was never home. I remember my mom always kidding me. She had a nickname in Italian for me, and it used to be Galandone. She used to say to me, oh, here he is. I come in 6 o'clock at night. What's for dinner? Oh, here he is. He comes home, he eats and sleeps and goes out again. And so then, from school, I went to service. And when I come out of service, I wasn't home at all. When I was in the service, whenever I come home, I was with Arlene. I joined the Army and I went away in September of 57. So I was only out of school about 3 months. In the late 50s, they had what they call a draft. When you became 18, you had to go down to the draft board and sign up. And you get a draft card. Well, that draft card was like a passport. If you never wanted to get caught not signing up at the draft board. Never. What happened is every man that was capable, that was physically fit, would get drafted when he was 21 to 22 years old. So they were drafting in 21, 22, and I didn't want to be drafted. I wanted to be out by then. So I went down and I joined. And in joining, you have to put in a little more time because they're doing you a favor, which actually is in reverse. You're doing them the favor, but they're giving you the liberty of joining and not waiting to be called. But when you're in a service, you just, all your mind is on is what you're doing there, what you're set to do. You got what they call an MOS, and that's what your job is. My job, I went into a 101st Signal Battalion in Yonkers, and I went to a Signal Corps, and we were dealing with radios, telephones, switchboards, teletypes, all kinds of new. In those days, today it's funny, you laugh that they were in the garbage, but in those days they were the new communication, and you get your orders every morning, and it would be, Louie, I needed a motor pool, I need a deuce and a half. Vinny, I need you in the motor pool, I need a 1.5 ton. And, we all got our jobs. Well, the nice part of that was when you had to go to the motor pool for your truck, you got served fast in the cafeteria because you go to the head of the line. And then we go for our truck. So I spent a lot of time laying wire and doing signal stuff. And you spend time in the kitchen, you got KP duty, and you got latrine duty, and But I did it all, and I managed, and I made it all work for me. But in the meantime, Arlene and I got married in 60.
But he wanted to be 21 before I got married, so he wouldn't have to ask his parents to sign for him. And that's why we waited. So I made the date as soon as I could after he was 21.
And Arlene and I had a beautiful wedding. Big wedding. Big wedding.
And we had a beautiful wedding.
And we had twins in August of 1961.
I always wanted twins. I had 9 siblings, and none of them had twins. And I was the last one to get married. And I kept saying, I want twins so bad. I want to have twins. And back then there was no ultrasound, so I didn't know till they were born that I was having twins.
And my unit that I was attached to was in the active reserves, got deployed. And I said, wait a minute, I can't get deployed. I said, I did my time, done 3 years or 4 years already, and now you're going to deploy me. And they said, well, listen, you do what you want, but you got 90 days to get your stuff together because we can't handpick. Your name came up, you're in the reserve unit, you're in the unit. That's what it's there for. We're deploying the whole unit. Well, they never called me, but they did reclassify me because I had 2 children. I was in the service till 1963, but the beautiful part of being there was I went in 57 right after Korea, and I got out in 1963, which I did 3 years of active National Guard as well. And I got out right before Vietnam. In August of 1963, I got out, and I believe it was August 1963, we were starting to get involved with Vietnam. But while I was in, we were in Cuba, we were in Berlin. They were building the Berlin Wall. We were having trouble with Khrushchev. We were having trouble with Fidel Castro. And President Kennedy was assassinated right after that. Come out of the service, and I wasn't really 100% sure whether I wanted to be a mechanic or not. I went and pumped gas for a year. I was a mechanic in a mobile gas station. Dad worked in New York, and now he got involved with 2 very wealthy men who all they had was a tuxedo business. And he brought that business from $500 a week to $5,000 a week. But Dad always painted his work. It was in gold. It was an opportunity that you wouldn't turn down. So I didn't know, but I said, all right, I'll come work for you, Dad, and we'll see where that goes. And I was his assistant, and I was making patterns, and the business was growing. So from 60, 61, 62 to 68, I want to tell you, I did nothing but work. I worked my dad's job. At night, I get out of work at 4:35. I go from 21st Street to 16th or 15th Street. And I used to go work in a very small shop. And it was a cousin and 2 or 3 guys working. And I used to cut paper, make patterns, till maybe 7:30, 8 o'clock. The money I made working for my dad, believe it or not, I used to make almost that working for his cousin on a Saturday. And boy, wasn't I rolling in it. When the boys came along in 61, we ended up feeling that we needed a bigger apartment. So I bought a home. I remember it was like 22, 23 years old. Bought a home. Dad gave us $1,800 because the house was $18,000. They wanted 10% down. We put the money down, but Dad, I say he gave it to us. No, he lent it to us. All right, so believe it or not, we had to get out of the apartment before the 1st. So otherwise, we'd have to pay for the January month. So we wanted to get out before the 1st, but we didn't want to break down on Christmas, between Christmas and New Year. So we moved out before Christmas. And we made our new home our Christmas home. And we had a great Christmas. Great Christmas. We had a tree, we had toys, we had everything in a week's time, but we did it. And I joined the fire department. And the fire department would keep me active. And I made a lot of nice friends. And I was going places in the fire department. But now every day, I'm getting in my car in the morning, I'm driving across the Tappan Zee Bridge into Yonkers, picking up Dad, and going to the city. Well, 8 years of that, 7 years of that became a grind. And I couldn't deal with the fedora hat, and the white shirt and tie, and the suits, and the overcoat. I just, it wasn't me. They told me years ago I was a blue collar. Leave me be. But they were trying to put a blue collar into a white collar. It wasn't working. I mean, even in the service. I was blue collar in the service. I was never officer material. But I left in 68 because I just was not happy. So what do? I looked through the newspaper for business opportunities. And I seen the business opportunity that I talked to my cousin about. And he wanted to do it. But at the end, he pulled out on me. How about dry cleaner? Yeah, dry cleaners, they make pretty good money. I don't think you gotta be a lot of smarts. Let's look at that. I'd be my own boss. This is great. But they needed money in it. They needed money down. All of that. So I called this guy's name was Jim. Jim Stoddard. And I said, I'm interested in the dry cleaners here in New City, New York. He said, well, why don't we get together? Where do you live? So it's not. I was kind of like, I did and I didn't, but when he started telling me how much money I needed to start, I had nothing. I owed my father money. He says, I have a totally smaller operation going on in New Jersey. He said, why don't you take a look at that? We come up here to Jersey, looked at the store. It was totally different than what I was seeing in Rockland County. We looked and we talked, and we didn't know which way to go. But Arlene says, why don't you mention it to your dad, and let's see if he'd help us. So how can I do that? So every day she'd ask me, did you tell Dad? Did you tell Dad? Did you tell Dad? No. She called my mother, and she told Mom. Oh, boy. I get home, and she says, I told Mom, so you better, tomorrow morning you're going to hear from your dad. Well, I did. And that he was, if that's what you want to do, and if that's what you think will make you happy, and you do it, and what you need, because Arlene said to Mom, we're going to need help. We don't have any money, but Lou's just very unhappy doing what he's doing. Dad says, I'll help you. If you're unhappy here in the city with me, I don't want you to be here unhappy. I'd rather you do, it's your life, I'd rather you be happy. I bought a dry cleaners in 1968. Opened it up April 1st, 1969, in a town where there was more cows than people. And before I bought it, I'd come up on a Sunday and sit by the churches and watch how many people would go in and how many people were wearing clothes. Well, clothes, I mean dry cleanable clothes. And they were a lot. Quite a few. So while I was in West Nyack, I bought the store in Jersey. And I spent 18 months commuting every day. It was 60 miles each way. And Arlene used to commute every day. Same 60 miles with the other car. So it was costing me for gas and insurance. But she had the baby. Lisa was 2-3 years old. So Lisa grew up in the store. We worked, and it was tough. We weren't making any money. I always laughed. I said I had 3 strikes against me. Number 1, I was Italian. Number 2, I was from New York. And number 3, I was Catholic. This was not a Catholic area. It was a Protestant area. And it certainly wasn't an Italian area. It was a Holland Dutch area. And New York, they hated New Yorkers. So I had 3 strikes against me. And the girl that worked for me had a car with mattress. She lived there. I used to take her car to the bank so people would see me with Jersey plates, because my car had New York plates. After 18 months of the commuting, we decided, well, we're going to stay here. I talked to some friends who were in the cleaning business. Some of them were good, some of them weren't so good. But I said, we're going to have to move up there so I had to leave the fire department. I had to leave the neighborhood where we were friends, and I had to become another newbie. So I joined the fire department up here, and now I'm starting to get known. And I grew with the neighborhood. When I sold the house on West Nyack and bought this house, I paid Dad everything I owed him that he gave me for the business. We were nice. 1974, I bought the store in the next town. And I struggled to pay that one off. I mean, I went through threats and all kinds of threats and enemies and people looking for money all the time, but I grew so hard that it didn't bother me one bit. I did settle more arguments with my fist than I would with my mouth because I just got so hard and I didn't care. And then there was a spot in New York State that I wasn't sure about. My brother wanted it. Oh, you're doing so great. I'm not doing anything. I want to be a dry cleaner. My dad helped him buy the store in New York State, building and all. He didn't want it no more. He was in it for 6 months and threw me the keys and said, hey, you're going to have it. I want no part of that business. My store in Sussex was a little bit of a gold mine. It was starting to grow. Everybody started to know me. We were doing very well. And bought the store in Vernon, 74. And by 77, 78, that store was doing very well. And that one in New York, that dump, well, I wasn't even counting the money. It was coming in so good. I bought another store up in New York in 1980. And I bought another store in New Jersey. And boy, we started really cooking. From 1968, when I first bought it, to 1980 was a struggle. But from 80 on, money was no object. Money was funny money. It was crazy money. And the next thing you know, I bought the acres next door. Before you know, we had a horse. And, well, we got a horse, so we may as well get a dog. We got a dog. We got cats. And before you know it, we're raising everything.
My goodness. We had every animal you could think of. My father didn't grow up with animals. We had cats and dogs and chicks and goats and horses and rabbits and peacocks. And he just rolled with all of that.
And now I got a truck. I'm going from store to store every day. The girls are doing their thing with their animals, and Arlene was working.
I loved it. I loved dealing with the customers.
And then the boys would come over, and one of the boys, which was Michael, while Arlene was working, Michael would go home, and he would straighten and clean the house, vacuum it all so Arlene could work.
That was me, and so one of us had to be that between my brother and I.
Louie would come down and wash the truck and wash whatever he could. He even washed a couple of the neighbors down shopping centers. Washed their trucks every weekend for a few extra dollars.
Every Saturday morning, I would go to work with him, and I had several people, other business owners in the shopping center, that I would wash their cars.
And then after a while, the girls started getting bigger, and we started giving Lisa a little bit more to do. And she started working around the store.
We all worked in the stores. You know, I wasn't some Italian princess that my father ran a dry cleaners and I sat by the pool growing up. I worked in my father's store from 6th grade.
Michelle was getting a little bit older, but Michelle actually started, just hanging around the store because she was very young.
He would take me on deliveries all the time. And I remember a specific road he would take me on because it had a lot of bumps. And he would let me get out of my seat and get into the back and sit on one of the bench seats in his delivery van because I would actually jump up out of the seat every time he went over the bumps. And it was like 3 or 4 bumps in a row. And he would always do that for me. Even though the road was out of his way, he would go that way because he knew how much fun I had. So at the time, it was something fun to do. But now reflecting on it, being older, he really went out of his way to make those deliveries special for me.
Meanwhile, Lisa's getting older. So we're using Lisa in the stores, from store to store. And now when you have 5 stores, out of 5 stores, I had 20 girls working for me. And you know there's always someone going to have to need to take the day off or get sick and a headache. Lisa would be the one I would send. Lisa, you got to go to Franklin today. Lisa, you got to go to Vernon today. Lisa, you got to... So she would kind of be my shape-up. However, as Michelle got older, she's watching her mother all the time, bagging and marking and waiting on customers. She got into it, so we gave her a store. And you're going to work the store. You're not going to be like Lisa, jumping from store to store. Lisa was able to do that. Michelle wanted to be in one spot. So we gave her the store in Vernon. And at one time we had Cheryl, which is now Michael's wife, and Sherry, which is now Louie's wife, working together in the store.
I was there just a little while before my sister-in-law Cheryl made a full-time job out of that.
I pretty much managed the front of the store. I was never a presser or did that. I was all marking, checking people out, dealing with the customers.
Whoever knew they were going to become sister-in-laws? But they were working in the store. They do a phenomenal job.
That was absolutely probably one of the places where people get beat up the most. But that job and all that my father-in-law went through for customer service became very, very clear there. We had a customer come in and complain one time about something with his clothes not being the caliber that he wanted to receive them back. But he called my sister-in-law and I names. The stupid girls you have working on your counter, the incompetent help you have. But my father-in-law handled the business portion of this conversation first and said to this man, and now about these 2 girls that I have working on this counter, they will be my daughter-in-law someday, and you will not, talk about them in such a manner.
When it came to business, you had to push him really, really far to get him angry because he was running a business. He wanted your business. He would do everything he could to please you. But when there was no pleasing somebody and that person was being disrespectful and rude, he was going to let you know because your business was not worth his employees being disrespected. He always took care of all of us that way.
That's basically the way the family started working around a business. Now, again, how did that end? Well, it ended when the boys got married. Michael got married, and Cheryl stayed in the store. And she stayed in the store until she became pregnant.
It was like he wasn't getting that I was having a baby and I was leaving. And I'm out to here, and I'm on the concrete floors, like, I don't know, I was working more than 8 hours a day, 6 days a week. And I finally one day just started crying and saying, Dad, I can't do this anymore.
But the girls, finally, Michelle, got to the point where she got too old to work in the store, and Lisa went off to college. So naturally, that took her out of the picture. And next thing you know, we started getting younger help.
I worked at the dry cleaners. That was my first ever job. Papa needed someone to work at the Sussex store on Saturdays. And I was getting into a little bit of trouble on college campus. So my mom was like, hey, and she knew the button to press. She's like, Papa needs help. Enough said. That's all you have to tell me. But I worked at the dry cleaners for a couple of years. It was what I needed.
I, too, worked the family business. Vernon was my store. I dabbled at Wantage, but Vernon was my location, and I enjoyed being there. Anytime I would hear him whistle from the back, like you just knew he was there. And hey, Ash, and always a big smile. And he was always so proud to come up front and, like, if a customer was there, make sure they knew that I was his granddaughter. And just the pride he had, and the fact that I kind of became like a manager there and I had my own keys, and just meant a lot to me.
Along with all of that, we built a big room on the side of our house. We built a 3-car garage out back. The boys were starting to get mechanically. They were starting to talk cars, and that was, that's great for me.
One of the fondest memories I had with Dad as a youngster, changed my first exhaust system with him in the backyard. So he drove the car on the lawn, which surprised me that he actually drove the car on the lawn. But he drove the car behind the house, and he and I, on our backs on the grass with a hacksaw, cut the regular muffler off, and then we put this thrush muffler. And one of the cool things about the thrush muffler is you got the sticker and the thrush sticker, and we put that on the car, and we put this muffler on the truck. And he said, "Okay, go ahead and start it up." I said, "Really?" "Yep, go ahead." And it's the first time I ever started a car, and then to listen to it.
We started building old cars. I'd seen an old car, and I mentioned it. I said, "Gee, it'd be nice to have an old car." Down a barn here, there was a '64 Chevy convertible, totally rusted out, and cats were living in it and everything else. And we asked the girl if we could have it or buy it off her. And she said, "If you could drag it out of the barn, you can have it." Well, the boys went down and dragged it, and the brakes were froze.
We had to beat the brake drums off it to make the car move, and we towed it home.
When they brought it up here, and well, lo and behold, we put a new motor in it. We had it painted, new tire. It was beautiful.
The three of us owned this car together. It was the first classic car that we restored together.
As we became teenagers and our interests really got into cars and whatnot, Lou would make them run good, I'd make them look good. Dad had the money.
Yep, I did the mechanical stuff. Michael did the paint and body work. Dad was a part of every bit of it.
He built the garage in the backyard, and it was just, that was our playhouse.
They always said to me, "What kind of car is your favorite?" And I always said a '56 Ford. So I wanted one of them. So we ended up, there was a '56 Ford for sale. We ended up buying it. It was all black.
Well, my father didn't want a black car. So we said, "Well, who are you doing the car for? Are you doing it for anybody else but yourself?" He says, "No." I says, "Then we do it the colors you want it."
Mike said, "What color you want?" I said, "I like to have that peacock blue. It's turquoise, really, and white, and the interior done." So it took us years, but we did it. It's beautiful. And I still got it. Here it is, 2023 coming up. Still in the back garage. Done. You go back there, turn the key, and drive it down the street. It's done. White walls. Oh, it's just gorgeous. And I met Arlene in 1956. And there was a song on the radio that she had playing.
The song was A Casual Look, and we've loved it ever since. And it's written on the back of our car.
Lisa's husband, Art, is an artist. He does pinstriping, lettering, murals, and everything. And I had him paint A Casual Look with the notes, on the scale of music.
He had approached me about doing that, and I hand painted the name of the song on the back of the trunk of that particular car.
So he wrote on there A Casual Look, and he wrote the date, 7/17/1956. That was the first date we went out on. And now I have a car that's identical almost to me asking her out. But we had a place called Chatterbox, and every Saturday night we'd have a party there. And it turned out to be an activity. We'd have a mob there, and Arlene and I put it together. And there was times I'd have 300-400 old cars there.
You'd have thought Dad had stock in that place. We even collectively sat and talked about what could we do to be owners of that place or partners in that place, because it was just so him.
Of course, my car was always a hit. And on the back, on the Continental kit, Art painted the Chatterbox.
That was a Christmas gift that I would airbrush his car in front of the Chatterbox, because that was pretty much the favorite place that he would spend a lot of his time. We even gave it to him at the Christmas party at the Chatterbox that year.
It's great. All of a sudden, there was the urge to really have something pristine, really have something exceptional.
They said, well, you know what? I know you love that hard top. I know you love that turquoise and white. But what would the ultimate car be?
What's your ultimate car? Let's not just pick a car and do it. Let's pick something that that you really like.
How about a 56 Ford convertible?
So now we go on a mission to try and find this 56 Ford convertible, and as it happens, we end up finding a car that a one owner car that came from a guy that worked in the Ford plant and actually watched his own car go down the assembly line in the Ford plant.
But what was so special about this particular car was, again, it was convertible. It had a power top. It had power windows. It had power seats. All things that these cars just didn't come with.
By this point now I have brother-in-laws, right? I have my brother-in-law Art, I have my brother-in-law Scott, and now we start working on this car. It's a family project.
I went with him. We looked at the car. He brought the car home. I remember he parked it in the carport, and we all were out there looking at it. It was fairly beat up. It was definitely showing its age, but it was a convertible, which was something he was looking for.
We take it apart in his garage at home. We catalog the whole car.
You're not going to believe it, but we took the body right off the frame.
Put the body of the car on a big rotisserie, they call it, that has the ability to rotate the entire shell of the car separated from the frame. So that's, a major restoration. Like, you don't usually do that, but this was basically rebuilding the car from the ground up.
Everybody's doing their own thing. It's a family project.
I would just be getting in the way if I tried to help with the restoration itself. I would grab a rag and wipe up after them. I would grab a rag and, work on detailing all of the knobs for the stereo and, wipe up any grease that's where it doesn't belong.
And we had a blast. We absolutely had a blast.
My brother-in-law Art created a picture of the car, and in the chrome bumper is a picture of my father and I. It's the coolest thing. And it's in my office. I look at it all the time, and it's just the fond memories of building that car.
Well, in 1995, my daughter got married. And we started working on that car in 93.
He wanted so badly to get this car done for it to be in our wedding.
That became the kind of the goal and the deadline of, we need to get everything kind of buttoned up so that we can roll this car out and use it and drive it to the wedding.
And it got done just in time, and the big reveal was on our wedding day. And he was just so proud to have this car that he had worked on with his sons, all of them, that we could use it in our wedding. It was very, very special.
Dad enters this car in a Victoria Nationals. He's in a class with 300 cars just like his, or the same vintage as his. Now, you could like the car, you could not like the car. These are purist people who are picking the winners. And he wins this national event with this car. So, of course, I'm thrilled because of the way it looks, right? That helped it get there. And my brother is thrilled because he got it there physically. It runs. My brother-in-laws, right? They were absolutely part of it. And, of course, there's my dad. He made all the choices. He made it a family thing that we could all be proud of.
Until today, that car sits in the front garage. The cars were a big thing of our lives. And the cars, I think, kept us pretty close together.
Growing up, classic cars was always a huge part of my life. I was introduced to cars at a very young age.
Growing up in that area is the cars, right? He always maintained his cars. He still has cars to this day. And between my uncle, my dad, my cousin Louie, we've all gravitated towards cars, right? It's a common interest between all of us.
That was always such a big part of growing up, was spending the weekends and the time with my dad building cars and working on this and that, and having that passion to be able to see my grandfather talk about it and all the people that he knew and that we got to know because of those cars, and it was just such a huge part of growing up. Papa had a number of different cars, and he used every single one of them. He rotated through them. He picked a different car for every Saturday night. He used a different car.
And at one time, I had 9 cars, all done. 55 Chevys, 56 Chevys, 64, 65 Chevys, Fords, I had a 54 dynamite cars.
Just a very, very cool scenery that I grew up into wanting to be a part of.
We're still big into cars. Louie built a 69 Chevy pickup truck. Michael, on the other hand, has got a 40 Ford. Young Louie just finished a 70 Chevelle.
My interest, my obsession, my addiction to cars absolutely started with Papa.
Kevin just finished a Nova.
It was always very, very cool to have that commonality with Papa, to have that conversation. He'd always ask, "Oh, how's your car coming? What's this look like?" Or have him just randomly stop over my dad's house on a Sunday while I was working on it, and have him start asking me all these questions about things that most people probably wouldn't see or think to ask. And it's always just been a really, really cool niche to have in common.
Young Michael has got a Camaro he's putting together.
As I've been working on this car, ironically enough, the one thing I'm looking forward, you would think you'd be like just looking forward to being able to drive it or take it to the first car show. My first thing that I really am dying to do is take my grandfather for a ride in this car.
We all have an old car. We're all doing something with old cars. And we just had a great time up until 2000. In 2001, Dad passed away. Mom was giving us headaches because she was living with us. But it turned out that my mother needed every nickel she can get, and we put her in a nursing home because we couldn't take care of her. That was $10,000 a month, and we were starting to run into a little bit financial difficulty because I bought a building, and the industry was telling us some false stories about the cleaning fluid you're using is cancer causing, and got everybody afraid of it. Everybody afraid of it. So people didn't want to use a dry cleaner, and people that didn't believe it used a dry cleaner. But in the meantime, they were scaring off all the landlords. Landlords didn't want to rent the dry cleaners because then the banks weren't going to give them any money because they were going to contaminate the soil. So I bought my own building. And that thing, I had that to, I think, 2008. And that didn't go well because what was going well was my stores were supporting themselves very well, but they couldn't support the building. The building had no support. So now my stores had to support the building. And the building was not supporting itself. So we started struggling. And industry was changing. People were getting more casual wear. It just turned out by 08, 09, things started turning financially for everyone. So in 08, I sold the building, and I sold a couple of the stores in New York, and I was trying to get rid of stuff. So we sold everything. We said, look, we'll keep the one store with the machines, and we'll live the dream. And in 2011, things weren't getting any better. We weren't making any money nowhere. So finally, in 11, I sold the last store. Came out financially scot-free with a few bucks.
As Dad's businesses, he started to sell his businesses. He started to look at retirement. He certainly was not the type of person to do nothing and retire.
I had told an Napa store down the street here that I'd love to drive because I seen a lot of guys driving part-time that I knew.
He had sold his last store, the store he started with, and he's got a job just running parts for the local parts store. But then he started to work for me. And what he did for me was he did our motor vehicle runs. Nobody likes going to motor vehicle. Nobody. Dad, I'd send him over there. He'd be gone for hours. I'd come back, said, "You have a hard time, Dad? What happened?" "Oh, no, I knew so-and-so. I got talking with so-and-so." I would have to go once in a while. If he was busy or couldn't go, I'd run over to motor vehicle. And I'd walk in, and they recognized me because of him. And the police officer standing inside, "Oh, hey, where's your dad today?" The girls behind the counter, "Oh, we love him. He's great." And it just, at motor vehicle. Every time he walks into the dealership, he would whistle, and everybody would know he was there.
Never failed. He always, as soon as he hit the door, there was a whistle. And it was always nice. Middle of the day, it was unexpected to see him, but you got that little catch up.
It's funny. We had a new guy working for us at one time, and Grandpa, whenever he'd open that door, he always has this whistle, and
I don't think he even notices he does it anymore.
he came in, and I would whistle back to him, and he'd obviously know who whistled back. Who else would whistle like him? Size of the shop is pretty big, and you can't see other people, but he heard the whistle, and all you hear is, "Hey, Mike," and out he comes, and the new guy that was working for us was like, How did he know it was you?" I'm like, this is my grandfather. But that whistle, I always remember that whistle.
Just such good, happy feelings every time I'd hear that whistle. Even when he was, coming through, the back door of the shop. He'd walk in and he'd whistle and be like, "Papa's here."
It was always a big ordeal to everybody that was working at our dealership that, "Oh, Lou's here. Big Lou's here. Papa's here."
And he would talk to all my people.
The funniest thing, after he took the time to talk to every person that crossed his paths, and more than just, "Hey, how are you? Hey, what's going on? How's so-and-so?" Every person that crossed his path in our dealership that day got his full attention. He'd start his walk out the door back to his car, and bare minimum, he'd say goodbye 5 times. "All right, I'll see you later. All right, see you, Kev. Take care. Bye. Bye." And you wanted to not answer him so you could stop the cycle of how many times he was going to say goodbye, but you couldn't. You had to answer him, but he always had the next goodbye to say.
Once COVID hit and so forth, the parts store job kind of went away for a while because things got slow, and at his age, they didn't want to take any chances.
And they let us all go.
My business during COVID, we stopped. Motor vehicle agencies were closed. Nobody could do anything. So I said to myself, well, I think I know how he'd feel. I'd probably go crazy. And one of the things I love doing because of him is cutting my lawn. And my lines have to be straight. It has to look a certain way. And so I said to Dad, "Look, I'm really busy at work. Do you think you could cut my lawn for me?" And so that was something he did every week. But I service my equipment at the end of the season every year, and I document everything, how many hours and so forth. So my John Deere tractor, I would put about 40 to 45 hours on it a year, change oil. So the year, my dad cut my lawn a couple of years. The first year when I went and serviced the tractor had 90 hours on it. The second year, it had almost 100 hours on it. And so I would watch him cut the lawn when I'd get home if he was here, or Sherry would tell me that he would ride around and make sure that he didn't miss anything. He'd mow at a slower pace. It was just hysterical that he put twice as many hours on a machine that I did, but that's how particular he was.
I'm still big in the fire department, still having a ball there. I don't fight fires. I do my main job is to get the report finished, the fire report, so we can turn it in. State requires reports.
Dad's been in the fire service for probably almost 57, 58 years now. It's something that he was very passionate about and something that I fell in love with. Some of the reason I fell in love with it is because he did it. I wanted to be with Dad, and he liked this, so I like this.
Probably the funnest thing that we did do with Dad was, as we got into early teens, we got into the fire department.
We couldn't join until you were 18. And so when he'd go on a fire call, we'd hear him in the middle of the night. We'd hear his feet hit the floor because Michael and I had a bedroom downstairs below his.
Many times in the middle of the night, fire phone would ring, tones would go off. Louie and Michael would be running upstairs pulling their pants on. Dad's running down the hallway. You didn't want to get in the hallway. You'd get run over. So I like to just watch because it was comical.
We'd jump in the truck with him and we'd go and we'd watch.
Louie and I, being twins, always enjoyed that time with Dad riding along. And so it obviously got us interested. It was, I would say, probably one of the first things that we had as a common interest.
We were so interested in the fire department, my brother and I, that on our 18th birthday, the day we turned 18, there was a meeting, happened to be the monthly meeting that night, and he and I joined. I think Dad was pretty proud of that.
That was the greatest thing in the world.
But as time went on, it became more of a thing for just Dad and I.
And I was working on my way. I was going to become chief soon.
The night he became chief, I was voted in as a second assistant foreman. So it was the first time in the history of the department that I'm aware of that a father and son were line officers together.
And become a chief, it takes 99% of your time.
Even though he worked so many hours and volunteered and he was gone a lot, it was never a question that his family came first. You never, ever felt like you were second to any of those things.
I enjoyed my time as a line officer. I did become chief eventually.
We grew up with a sense of knowing how important it is to be a part of a community.
You live with that, and you clearly, in his own kids, that became part of who they are.
He was on the school board. After I was chief, I got on the school board. I wanted to do what he did.
I valued that Dad was on the Board of Ed, and that he was a part of the fire department. He was a part of the Board of Ed for the schools that we went to. He was part of the fire department that protected our home too. So I went on the Board of Ed when I was an adult.
If anybody ever needed anything, he was there, whether it was money, time, a meal. It didn't matter, and he would never tell anybody. You never knew that that person was living with us. You never knew that he loaned somebody money. He never told anybody.
I think it's this emulating the man who taught us all, I think has transferred into something beautiful that we're able to do through our business, and it's something called Stuff the Boat, which started out as this little idea that we'd hope we'd stuff a rowboat full of toys for a local organization that hit well over 2,000 children this year. And instead, it's turned out to be a mounded 23-foot boat full of toys that we deliver to people that come on hard times for all different reasons.
One of the things that was so wonderful about having the dad I had growing up was you always knew if there was something you needed or something was wrong, that he was going to fix it. The first time I lived away from home other than college, living on my own, was down in South Jersey. And I remember coming out to my car in the parking lot after work and my tire was flat. My first thought was not a tow company. My first thought was not even my husband. It was call my father 3 hours away and he will know what to do. And he did, you know, and I thought about that afterwards. I was like, wow, I probably could have figured that out myself, or I probably could have called my husband who was 15 minutes away. But no, it was, no, my dad will know what to do. And it was the first time in my life that I recognized, no matter how old I am, that will always be. And it's something that I see in my brothers and I see in my sister and I very much see in myself.
And I think all of those things made him, most importantly, the best family man.
My dad really gave us a sense of family that was above a lot of other families. We started having family dinners. You know, of course, growing up, Dad he closed his business at 6 o'clock. Dinner was on the table at 6:05, and we all had to be there.
We didn't see him until dinner time. And dinner time didn't happen until he was home.
It never occurred to me that it was anything other than just having dinner together.
We enjoyed our dinner time to the extent that we would sit there for hours.
Our quality time as kids growing up was at the dinner table after dinner.
It was amazing to me how many times when dinner was over, we were still sitting there hours later. We'd get into conversations that just were amazing, and my dad was the head of that.
And the kids, believe it or not, where you would see, even on TV, the families, the kids get up and leave. The kids never got up and left the table.
Because he was so busy, that was the hour every single day that he got to bond with his kids. And it was so important for him to bond with his kids, even though he was so busy. It changed all of us. It changed all of us.
So just in general, meal times were a lot of fun, and it was the central part of our family bonding.
But most of the time we would talk about what we did. Lou would ask them, are you unhappy about anything? And the boys, Louie and Michael, because Michelle was the baby, was younger, would say, yeah, we don't like her, get rid of her.
So, of course, that wasn't very nice, but they all chuckled about it, except Michelle. She didn't chuckle very much about it. She was upset.
We start laughing, and Dad probably had a typical rough day, and he tells us stop the laughing. It's serious. We're sitting down having dinner. We're going to have a conversation. Fine, but stop the giggling.
My dad would look at my mom and say, Arlene, do you believe them? They can't even be serious. And she would, I know. I don't know what their problem is. And then he would lean down and take a bite, and she'd be like, and we would get hysterical.
You guys can't eat and be serious. Leave the table.
And of course, you can imagine this just escalates.
So Michael couldn't be serious. He left the table. And Louie as well. The next thing I know, Lisa's hysterical. Well, of course, Michelle, they beat her up, but she was hysterical now, laughing too. So she left. I said, they want to get rid of the assistant. You can't get rid of her. You can't send her back.
So one at a time, we leave and go into the bathroom and close the door. And we're hysterical in the bathroom.
So I'm sitting there all alone with him. So I get up and say, you'll have to excuse me.
But the most hysterical thing was when my mother ended up in the bathroom with us laughing, and my father's sitting there having dinner by himself.
And next thing you know, I look around and I'm eating dinner all by myself. Everybody's in the next room, hysterical. I can hear them all laughing. So that's where that went. And I finished my dinner and said, well, if you guys want to come back out and eat, it's up to you.
She was the instigator, and here she ends up with us.
Everything was fun with them.
It wasn't in his DNA to fool around at dinner. My mom, she was one of 13 kids, all that was happening was talking and so forth. And so it was really neat to see the two of them be Ricky and Lucy and just have so much fun with my mother that way.
Lucy and Ricky Ricardo are characters. Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz played characters that were Lucy and Ricky Ricardo. My parents are Lucy and Ricky Ricardo.
My mother was a nut like Lucille Ball. And my dad was just like Desi Arnaz. He was just like Ricky.
My mother, she's a whack job.
And my mother just being a whack job. Just being off the charts. And my father being her straight man.
Oh, she did some simple, silly things, but we always had a ball with her.
Well, I was out in the backyard, and we had rabbits. And I put 2 rabbits together, and they started fighting. So I put my hand in to stop them. And one of them grabbed right onto my hand, and I ran around the house, the yard, with this rabbit on my hand, yelling.
And her running around the yard with the rabbit swinging from her arm. And my father just saying, Arlene, what are you doing?
Or opened the garage door, and one of the kids playing outside tied their dog to the handle of the garage door. Well, the garage door went up and here's this dog swinging from back. She opened it again because she didn't believe what she saw. And here's this dog swinging.
Her coming from the pool into the house and not opening the door and just going straight through the door.
And instead of opening the screen door, I went through it. And the kid said to me, Mom, you're not Wonder Woman. You can't do these things.
She was hysterical.
That's why they call me Lucy.
I'm using that as an overall example of my father's unconditional love for my mother.
It made it so much fun because it wasn't the way he was, but he has so much love and admiration and respect for her that she could be that.
Everything to me was funny. That's why sometimes we would argue a little bit, because I would make it funny and it wasn't funny.
And so there were times that he would get into arguments with my mom, and they'd be over silly things. We really wouldn't even pay attention so much.
But if you argue and separate, that's a tragedy. If you argue and grow, that's a success. And so I got to see that in my parents, and I am a firm believer and always said you're a product of your environment. And so watching them be Lucy and Ricky and fight once in a while and totally make up and then laugh and have fun, those are the things that I got to keep.
They were just having fun, and we learned how to have fun from them. And if you wonder how that works, you watch I Love Lucy. That was our 24/7. We just never stopped laughing. Never stopped laughing.
We always had Sunday dinner. Sunday was family day.
So Sunday dinner was very, very important to us, and we always were together.
There was never an invitation for Sunday dinners. It was an automatic thing. You didn't be invited. You had to be there.
Sunday, you had to stay home. But if anybody wanted to come over, that was fine.
Whoever we were with on a Sunday just was invited to the table. You just kept moving and putting chairs in.
And so they got to witness what we just took for granted.
And the door was always open. You know what I mean? Always had somebody living here that wasn't related, but the boys had a friend that needed a place to stay. The girls had a friend that needed a place to stay. They were always welcome here.
We had many people live with us for long periods of time.
We had a guy living here for months. His mother used to call here and find out how he was.
There was one boy I kept, because every time he went home to his mother, he'd get in trouble. So I kept him here.
It was never a question why anybody was there. It didn't matter why anybody was there. But they always had a home.
Sunday morning, my mother would look out the front window and see whose cars were there to figure out how much breakfast she had to make. And so the same thing happened with Sunday dinner.
If Mom was making a meatloaf, it became a meatloaf. It became a meatloaf.
The greatest thing was that my mother was so willing for the company, you know, and certainly Dad was interested in whoever was there because he'd ask them 1,000 questions.
My father always sat at the head of the table, and everybody would always flock to that part of the table.
Everybody would talk. Everybody would get into conversations. And it would last the whole afternoon.
There were conflicts sometimes because people would sit at that end of the table, and it was like, oh, no, those chairs belong to us. That's where we belong.
Well, our family started to get bigger. We got married, started to have children, and so now Sunday dinner wasn't stopping because of that.
And we start realizing that the room isn't big enough. So we added on to the room because we were not changing what we did. It was Sunday dinner.
I don't know how we fit before the addition, but we did.
And the family got bigger, and we had more friends, and who was dating who, and the grandkids were getting bigger. And so he now puts an addition on the addition to allow for all of us to be at the same table.
That's when the family room that they had built became the dining room, so that they could extend the table. And as we got married, and then of course as we had children, the table kept getting longer and longer and longer.
And the table that is there today is still not big enough for all of us.
Sunday dinners was just an amazing gift to give to our kids.
All of the cousins, they looked forward to being there.
But what was so cool about it was that you wanted to be there. You didn't want to miss it. Everybody looked forward to that.
Somebody once said to me, "Oh, you have to go to Sunday dinner? That must be a responsibility. You gotta go to your parents' house every Sunday." It never dawned on me that somebody would perceive it that way. It was never a have to. To this day, it's not a have to. Where else would I want to be?
This is how important family dinner was to our family. One night, we were at dinner. It was a Sunday night. All of us are there. Kevin was probably maybe 4 or 5 years old. And so it came time to leave. I had to go home. It was dark, and he did not want to leave.
We uprooted Kevin that night. Louie came home gracefully because he was older and understood, but Kevin didn't want to leave.
I was not ready to go home. Everybody else was leaving. My parents, my brother, all my cousins that I was having all this fun with. Everybody was leaving. I didn't want to go home. I wasn't ready to go home. I wanted to hang out with Papa.
I remember he didn't want to go home. They made him go home.
He's crying, no, I want to stay. And it's, no, we have to go home.
My parents dragged me out of there, and I had a fit.
This child was in a car seat in the back screaming, "Turn this car around! Take me back!"
Now, at that time, I had lived quarter of a mile, half a mile from Grandma and Papa's house.
So we go home, and now Kevin's just giving us a hard time. I want to go back. So as smart as I was and the great parent I was, again, it's dark. I'm in the driveway with him. Sherry's in the house. She's listening to this go on in the driveway. I said, go ahead, walk back.
When I was unloading, and I ended up in the kitchen when my husband showed up without Kevin. And he said, well, he's going back to my mother's. I said, you have to go after him. You have to follow him. There's bear. You gotta go.
I said, I can't do that. What are we going to teach him? But family dinner and being at my parents' and being with Papa was so important. Well, he had these little lights on his sneakers. So all we could see is the lights going up the road.
I do remember having the light up shoes, walking up this big hill in the dark.
Here I am, running up behind people's houses, watching him, that nothing happens to him.
We couldn't believe it. When we heard the knock on the door, we looking at his Kevin.
And I'm like, this kid won. He won.
And the reason I have the memory is almost like this feeling of not regret, like this feeling of like knowing you're not supposed to do something. And it just, there's like all the elements of that memory that I'm like, no, I think I remember that.
That's how important family dinner is to all of the kids.
It was always really a priority of the week to get to spend time with my grandparents, my aunts and uncles, and my cousins.
For me growing up, it was always, I had the option to do sports, traveling soccer and things like that, but always kind of declined those opportunities because Sunday dinner was so important. And that time with our cousins who, became our best friends, we were with them all the time, is really, I think, something special. And it was always at Grandma and Grandpa's.
Sunday dinner has always been like a very special thing, and it's been really crazy to watch it grow.
Family was important, and we always wanted to stay together. Didn't matter how many family members there were, we didn't cancel dinner, we just accommodated for it. We would joke about this huge table that we would have in this one gigantic, the largest room in the house would just have this long table. And it was, over the years, it would just get bigger and bigger. And now there'd be another table off to the side, and more grandchildren. And then, of course, spouses. And then it didn't take long for, there's just absolutely no room anymore.
And now we have great grandkids, and it's insane. That's the only word that can describe it, is it's insane. But it's love, and it's friendship, and it's what I aspire my family to be as we grow.
As a kid, you just have trouble understanding, quality time with family and stuff like that. And the older that I've gotten, I've really learned how much of a blessing that Sunday dinner always has been.
Really allowed me to get close with my cousins in a way that maybe wouldn't have been possible if we didn't get together that often.
I didn't realize it was so unique until I got a little older and started noticing that not many people at school did that, and my friends didn't understand when I said, oh yeah, I have Sunday dinner, like they didn't get what that meant.
People don't understand when I say my entire family gets together almost every Sunday, and they're like, yeah, like your mom and your dad. I was like, no, like my entire family.
The older that I got, the more I did appreciate it and realized that it's a super special thing and not every family has that.
Virtually not one person has ever said to me, oh, I can't believe that you got together with everybody on a Sunday, you know? Most people were so jealous.
The thing that was always amazing was the conveyor belt at the grocery store and the response to the people in line behind me as I was prepping for a Sunday dinner. And, you know, inevitably people would say on a random, you know, June, Sunday, Saturday afternoon, gosh, you must be having company or something like that. And I would say, it's my family. It's my turn to host. We do this every week. There are 24 of us. There are 27 of us. You know, oh, we have a light group this week. We're only 19. Essentially, we have a holiday every week. And the response of the people behind you, you hope was something they took home and acted on, because they were all a little bit envious that somebody had a family that stopped the world for just a couple of hours and reconnected.
Holidays weren't quite as big a deal. They were a bigger deal, but not quite as big a deal as I hear other families reference Thanksgiving and Christmas, New Year's, Easter. Almost every Sunday it was that. And if the holiday, it doesn't matter. Thanksgiving is always a Thursday. If a Christmas was a Tuesday and New Year, whatever it was, it didn't matter, because a couple of days before you were together for dinner and a couple of days after you were going to be for dinner. So it just worked. It was very, very good. It was a great thing.
When I came into the family back in 1997 and going to Sunday dinner, it was just amazing to see, the conversations. Everybody would just have their own conversations going on, and I'd be sitting at the table like, like a ping pong.
Very extremely chaotic, lots of noise.
You always got to hear about what everybody else was doing. You got to keep up with everybody.
We would all just talk. We would just talk about our weeks. We would talk about life. We would talk about whatever project anybody was working on, the kids, what happened that week.
Everybody would keep their next joyous thing to themselves for Sunday. Baby announcements, marriage announcements, graduation announcements, any accolades of any of the family at whatever generation it was kept quiet until Sunday dinner, so everybody could hear it all at the same time. New jobs, any of those experiences.
We were always all together.
He was shaping all of our families to bond in a way that would last a lifetime for us. I really don't think he realizes that. I don't think he realizes that my family is the way it is because of him. And my favorite times in my whole life at 52 years old is sitting at my table with my children for an hour after we've already finished dinner. And we don't even realize that we're doing it because that's what I grew up with. Those are my favorite memories with my children. And I get those memories and I get to make those memories because of him.
Shamalan. Shamalan. Shamalan.
Shamalan.
Shamalan? Shamalan! Shamalan! M. Night Shyamalan! Shyamalan! M. Night Shyamalan!
Yes!
That's the whole thing.
Having the last name Cecchini, I was always in good company, and I'd either go to the doctor's office or the grocery store, and somebody would see your last name, and they would make it a point to say, "Oh my God, I love your grandfather. I love Louie." He's never a bad word spoken about the guy, but also along with that, it seems like 50-60% of the people would ask, like, "Are you guys still doing Sunday dinner? How do you know about Sunday dinner?" Like, "Oh yeah, we do it every weekend, right? That's just a normal thing." Like, you don't, so now looking back, well, of course that would stick with people because a lot of people don't do that.
When people say you are a Cecchini, not like your family, your Cecchini family, like you are a Cecchini. I had no idea that people really looked at our family and admired it.
In the early parts of my career, I started realizing that the people were coming to me. And when you start having conversation with customers and you start realizing that they're coming to me because I'm Louie's son. And so my dad was so well known and so liked throughout the community that I feel my early years of success were absolutely attributed to him on a lot of levels, but specifically the fact that he's Louie's son. If he's Louie's son, he's worth giving a chance. While that was a great thing, I started also realizing there's a hell of a lot to live up to.
My parents never brought us up to feel better than anybody. It wasn't being better.
My father instilled in us a sense of family, that it was so important that your family name, that how you present yourself, how you're perceived by others, about doing the right thing and helping others is something that is important, and that all of us needed to do that.
And they said, well, you were a Cecchini. And like, well, okay, somebody explain this to me. What the hell does that even mean? I guess it was people really saw us that way. I never felt that way. But now I like I said, I know what it means. It's something very valuable.
My niece Heather, talking to Louie, my son Louie, and her brother Michael about an incident that happened in school. And she kind of reprimanding them, saying, "Hey, you guys, your name is Cecchini. That means something in this town. That means something to all of us. And you need to act like a Cecchini."
Every single one of us children, every one of our spouses, and every one of our children carry that pride and live that role.
I don't expect things because my name's Lou Cecchini. I feel as though I'm held to a higher standard because my name is Lou Cecchini.
Lou is my father's name, and I was named after my dad. But Vincent was not his middle name. Vincent was my mother's father's middle name. So what happened is my dad was named Louis Arnold Cecchini. I was Louis Vincent Cecchini. Suddenly Louis comes along. And what are we going to name Louis? I mean, we got twins, Louis and Michael. Well, got to have a Louis. So I said, well, I'd like to name him Louis Arnold after my dad, like they named me after Mom's dad.
Growing up, being called Lou, I always, felt a little bit special about being named after my grandfather, and of course, my dad being Lou.
So now there's three of us. Louis Arnold, Louis Vincent, Louis Arnold. Well, lo and behold, Louis has a son. Now, what do you think he's going to name him?
When I had a son, I wanted to name him Lou as well.
I then was born and I was named after Papa.
So now we got Louis Arnold, Louis Vincent, Louis Arnold, and now another Louis Vincent.
One of the greatest things was when my grandfather, my dad, myself, and my son were together, we would take a picture of the four of us, the four Lou's.
And now I recently had my first son, so naturally he was named after my father.
But now we're taking those pictures of my grandfather, of course, has passed, but now there's still four Lou's and we're taking those pictures and it's pretty special.
When I had the boys, the twins, of course the first twin had to be named after his father, Louis. They were born 6 minutes apart. And Michael was my doctor's name.
We named Michael after the doctor.
And I was named after the doctor, Michael.
Michael is Michael. And he had a son. And he named him Michael. And it turned out that when he had his son Michael, Louie had his son Louie. And they're 2 months apart. And now, think about it. From the twin fathers, they have 2 boys. Louie named him Louie, right? Okay, that's great. 2 months. Little Michael, young Michael, had a son. He named Michael.
Ironically, and how God would have it, or how it would be, we ended up with sons, very close in age, and in fact closer than us in age. I think me and Louie are 74 days apart, and I think the boys are 68 or something. So it's amazing how close it actually is. And now having these several generations of Louie Michael, Louie Michael, Louie Michael, it's pretty cool to be a part of, and it will be, going forward for years to come.
When I was pregnant, everybody said, Michelle, you're having a girl. I see you with a girl. I know you're having a girl. There was one person that said, Michelle, you're having a boy. And it was my dad. When my son Darius was born, there was no question that I was going to honor my father. And my son's name is Darius Vincent, which is my dad's middle name. And there is not a better name, more fitting, and a better tribute, and a better way to honor my father than to name my son after him.
Having the middle name Vincent is like a badge of honor. Even though my first name isn't Louie and my last name isn't Cecchini, I still get to carry a little piece of that family name with me everywhere that I go.
Our second son is named after him, so obviously we couldn't pick Louis because I understand the trend, but we went with Liam Vincent Kane, so they share the same middle name and same initials, and that's as close as we could get, but Papa calls him LVC because he knows that that's their connection, and watching him hold him for the first time was one of the best moments of my life, and I will cherish it forever.
When I got married, my parents were very, very supportive, and Dad gave my hand in marriage and was very supportive. So when that marriage was ending, even in that, my parents were willing to stay respectful and compassionate, which had to have been very hard for my father. He saw the hurt, and instead of turning that into something that would upset the girls and I and make us feel uncomfortable or bad, he just stepped in. He just stepped in and was the man in our lives.
He came into me and my sister's life when we needed stability the most. And I didn't realize that then, but him and Grandma really, really gave us the stability we needed.
There's something about who he was to them in those critical years and he continues to be for them. That is special and different because of that experience.
He helped shape my life when I needed shaping, and he still does it to this day, which is, I don't think he realizes it, but I know if I ever need him, he'd be there in a heartbeat.
That was one of the things that came out of that experience for us, was the real value of family. When they are there for you, even though he must have been hurting so badly, it wasn't about that. It was about just loving us and being there for us.
We didn't always have that supportive male role until my wonderful dad came in the picture. So knowing that he was there to provide that for us was a really great experience and something unique.
When Art came into our lives and he saw the happiness for us, he loves Art like a son without any tainting from this being a second marriage for me.
As it turned out, it was, it was just the best thing that could ever happen to me in my life, meeting Lou and Arlene and of course the rest of the family now.
He loves Art, sometimes more than me, I think. I've been told if this one doesn't work out, they're keeping him. I'm out and they're keeping him.
I met Sherry when she was 14 years old and I was 17 years old. She's a freshman in high school. I was a senior in high school, same school. I actually met her through my sister Lisa. She was a friend of my sister Lisa's. And she actually stayed at the house one night. And so she and my sister had gone to bed, and Sherry and I started talking, and I just fell in love with this girl.
I just saw a connection that I had never seen before.
The sense of family that Sherry grew up with in her house was a bit different than us.
My parents both came from a generation of parents that didn't engage. They didn't, and it was multi-generations of, they didn't engage. And in my father's background, they were tough German alcoholics, basically.
Sherry will tell you that she gained her tremendous sense of family from us.
At a time that my father, God bless him, was trying to teach me to be as tough as I could possibly be so that the world wouldn't take advantage of me. I could form those boundaries. I could create that side of me that allowed the world not to take advantage of me, but I could also open up a softer side that I didn't know existed before this.
Through that time, my relationship with my in-laws, and I'm going to say mostly my father-in-law, it certainly grew. And when I was willing to do things for him or with him, it confused him a bit. I believe he probably thought, what is this guy trying to get out of this relationship here? I firmly believe that I taught him a much bigger sense of family.
Through the raising of our children in a way that my parents never saw children be raised, it softened their edges and it made family much more dear to them. And that came as a result of this big, beautiful family that took me in.
Pretty special how accepting my parents, my dad was of everyone, and how they love Sherry like they love me.
As the story goes, I am due to take this girl out. It was Thanksgiving weekend. It was a Wednesday night. This girl was home from college. I asked her to go out on a date with me. She said yes. I was very excited to take this girl out on a date. And the Wednesday night came for me to take her out, and she canceled. And my mom and dad, more so my mom, but my mom and dad both, they saw I was very, very disappointed. And ironically, that was unusual for me to be disappointed, right? Especially about a girl. Okay, so I go out that Wednesday night and I meet Cheryl Hamel, right? She's on the dance floor dancing with some guy. I cut in, and she never danced with him the rest of the night, or anyone else for that matter.
So he was a little sure of himself. I was a little standoffish because he was very determined, like, I'm going to get this, and sometimes that pushes you away a little bit.
The next morning, Thanksgiving morning, I get up, and mom and dad were sitting at the table, and they say, "How we know you were disappointed yesterday. How are you today?" And I said, "No worries." I said, "I met the girl I'm going to marry last night." And they said, "Yeah, right." And I said, "You'll see." I says, "I'm not certain. You'll see."
Into the relationship I don't know, a few weeks, we decided, well, maybe we shouldn't see each other every single day. And that lasted, I think, for a few days. And then we started seeing each other every single day.
And so every Friday night and every Sunday dinner after, Cheryl's been there.
I knew that they were going to be great in-laws if I ended up with Mike.
They adored her. In a lot of cases, I think they liked her more than me.
I was doing a job at Michael's shop, and going along doing this job, and he was asking me some personal questions about my life and everything, and I was answering them as honest as I could, and he knew my situation, that I was single at the time, and he decided to set up a date between his sister and myself, and it was love at first sight. So that was, the beginning of this, what we are in now, 25-year relationship.
He loves art, and art respects and values him so much.
My dad had already known my husband Scott's family because Scott's dad owned a paint store next to my dad's cleaners.
I would be in the back unloading a paint delivery. He'd pull up to drop off the dry cleaning, and we'd wave and say hi, but didn't know him personally. Just he was always in a rush. He was always, you knew we had a place to be and a thing to do. So he made sure he got his job done and got out of there. So we didn't have a whole lot of time to get, obviously, to know each other at that point.
There was no question. He welcomed Scott with absolutely no issue. He became one of his sons instantly.
He was just very, very welcoming. The whole family in general was very, very welcoming. So it was, I felt like I was right at home.
When I met Patrick, he was welcomed into this family exactly how I expected him to be.
From the first time I met everybody, everybody was so welcoming. I don't know what Heather had told them about me, but everybody welcomed me with open arms.
It's so cool to see because obviously Patrick is really close, with my family and everything.
I spent more time with her family than I spent with her. There was some times before, in our relationship, she's like, who do you like more? Do you like my family or do you like me more?
He has really taken a liking to Grandpa over the years. And him and Patrick will go to breakfast every once in a while.
I feel it's really important to set time apart and show them how important they are to us.
So I really think with his service being a fireman and Patrick being a police officer, they've really bonded over that as well.
So I feel it's an honor for me to be part of this family. Dance on tippy toes and make sure I don't fall out of it.
Introducing my wife to Papa and the family was actually pretty easy because Danny actually waitressed at the Chatterbox for years and years and years and had interactions with Grandma and Papa sometimes twice, 3 times a week. So there wasn't really an introduction that needed to be made there because she already knew them.
When I first started bringing my now wife around, there was never any to do. It was always huge open welcome arms.
I get in trouble for this story because the way I introduced Matt, my husband, to the family was not the way I remember I introduced him to the family. And the way he tells the story is a lot different, but I guess I did not give all the information when Matt met the family. I'm pretty sure that I said it was my cousin's wedding. Matt said I said it was my friend's wedding. So we got all dressed up to go to my friend's wedding. And as I'm introducing him to, this is my uncle and this is my aunt, he goes, wait a second, who just got married? I said, my cousin. He goes, that's not what that's not what I was told. You said it was your friend's wedding. I was like, well, this is my friend, but Michael's my cousin. He's like, but wait, I just met your grandfather and your grandma and your aunts and your uncles and your cousins. He goes, now I have to go all day realizing that I just met your entire family and I didn't think that's what I was doing today. And I was like, well, you just met my entire family. Yep, that did happen. Yeah. He was loved from the moment that everyone met him.
When Dennis and I met, we met at CKO and we were, working out and workout buddies and sparked a friendship, and introducing him to the family. Everyone's so open and loving.
So me being welcomed into the family was definitely nerve-wracking, because you don't know how people are going to accept you, how they're going to look at you, depending on what they already know about you or don't know about you. Surprisingly, when I met Papa and Grandma, they were like open arms.
And I have a screenshot of a text message from Papa that must have been from after they met Dennis for the first time. And he actually said, "Holy shit, Ash." Holy shit, Ash, we're so happy for you. He makes you so happy. We couldn't imagine anyone loving you more than we do, but we think he might take the cake.
Bringing a child into the relationship, that was another fear factor that I had. So with that, they were, who's this? What's his name? How old? And they started loving him from day one.
I've said to my husband multiple times, if you don't look at me the way Papa looks at Grandma when we're old, I'm divorcing you. So just knowing that I got that text message from him after, I was done. I'm like, okay, great, we can get married now.
A lot of people know that I lost my father. So with that, this family just really accepted me, loved me, and it was not long before I felt just like I've been here forever.
Family is not just biological. It's just not biological. And we learned that from my parents too, with our spouses. In-law is not a word. My sister-in-laws are my sisters. My brother-in-law is my brother. And that is because my parents hold them as their children.
My twin brother Michael and I are, I think, as close as two brothers can be. I'm that close with my sisters. But to take that one step further, I'm that close with my sister-in-law and my brother-in-laws. They mean as much to me as my brother does. And that's all because of my parents and because of my dad. We have such a great sense of family.
Calling him Dad because I've always felt like a son to him. Not like, I know I'm a son-in-law legally, but I feel like a son to him. And the same for me, he feels like a father figure, a dad to me.
I call Lou Dad. I don't know when I started. It was pretty, I don't know if it was before we were engaged, after we were engaged. I know it was before we were married. It was always comfortable calling him Dad.
Because you're not biologically in the family, but you are married into the family, but you're still above that. That's just the way I've always felt. I think that's why I feel comfortable calling him Dad, and I think he, at the same time, likes to be called Dad, not my father-in-law. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just, personally, for me, I like the feeling of saying, yeah, he's my dad. I love my dad, my biological dad, but he's my dad too.
I call him Papa because he is like a grandfather to me. He makes me feel like one of his own, grandchildren.
When I was growing up, there would be people that I would hear calling my father Dad. Man, would that infuriate me. I hated that. And I hated it because he was my dad. He wasn't your dad. He wasn't your dad. He was my dad. And I was so proud that I was his daughter. I didn't think anybody else deserved to call him dad. And I finally realized as I became an adult that it was actually the greatest compliment anybody could ever give me, because they loved my dad like I did. So I was finally able to accept that and be flattered that they saw in him what I saw in him. And I got to the point where I was happy to share him with everybody, because I knew it didn't change my relationship with him. It wasn't that he was giving them any more attention than me. It just took me a little while to realize that it was the biggest compliment that anybody could ever give me, was to call my dad dad.
Spending time with my grandfather could be endless, mostly because he never runs out of things to say. But there's always such value to the conversations. There's always more than just the surface level of, hey, Kev, how you doing, in a conversation.
He was able to carry on a conversation. And I know that sounds a little weird to say, but there was just something that I felt, and I think most people feel, very comfortable talking to him.
But it doesn't matter where that person comes from or what their likes or dislikes are. He could find common ground with everyone.
Even to this day, I feel like I can sit and have a conversation with him, and he's just such a great person to talk to. He's very easy to talk to. He listens.
And he hears what you're saying. I think maybe that's the other part of it, is he actually hears what you're saying and responds appropriately.
The memory of the names and the places and the people and the cars. He remembers a lot of people by their cars. It's very cool, because I think as he remembers all those people, no question, remember him as well.
The people at the firehouse, same thing. I said, hey, they say, geez, we love having conversations with your dad. He just is so easy to talk to. But I think he's easy to talk to because he listens to what they have to say. He is genuinely interested in what they have to say. And then he's able to add to the conversation in a way that makes them like him. And it's served him well.
He's always so genuinely interested in your life and what you have to say.
He was always wanting to know how you're doing and what's going on with you. He as much as, us Italians, we can talk about ourselves, he always wanted to ask about, how is your day? What's new with you?
Any conversation you would want to have with him, he would want to have that conversation with you and just be invested, and always looks you in the eyes. And when he asks how you're doing, you can tell that he really cares. He really wants to know how you're doing and what's going on in your life.
He loves to hear stories. He loves to hear Joe and Rita and what this one's doing.
He'll say, hey, whatever happened with that? Or where is that person now? He listens to every detail, and it is important for him to not forget.
I've got a lot of my own friends that have met and know him, and Papa still remembers them because they waited tables for him at the Chatterbox on a Saturday night or whatever it may be.
Even growing up, I had a lot of friends that would come to Sunday dinner, and a lot of, people would come and go, and even to this day, he still asks how everybody's doing and, what everyone's up to, and you can tell that he just really cares.
I think I learned a lot about being able to have a conversation and not just be someone who talks and not just be someone who sits there and listens, but to be able to hold a conversation with somebody. A lot of that is something that I learned from having conversations with him.
He'll look at you and he'll talk to you like you're an equal, and forget the 50 plus years between us. He'll say a phrase like, and Kev, he's not a guy like us. He's guys like us. And the first time he said that to me, and it just kind of just solidified, like, this guy is such a friend. Like, he's a friend of mine. Which is something I'm sure not a lot of people can relate to or have in a grandparent.
If you were fortunate enough to catch the chair vacant beside him and the conversation would start, the man on vacation was just at ease, and he was just ready for the next big topic to come along. And it's just easy to find your spot in the chair.
I actually only just in the last year or two heard the story of how Lake George came to be for my grandfather and my dad and his siblings. And so funny to hear that they stumbled upon it one night traveling back from somewhere else.
In 1965 or 66, Arlene and I took a vacation. We had the boys and we had Lisa. I wanted to take them on vacation every year, and we did. We went to the North Pole, and we seen Santa Claus.
It got late, and they knew that they weren't going to be able to drive all the way home, so they just picked an exit, got off, and found this little motel.
First hotel we see, we pull in. It's called Frank Cove Motel. So we need a room for the night. We got $18.
And we stayed in that motel. The next morning, they got up, and now we're going to travel home. And instead of going out the same exit, they decided to go further on that same road into town.
We went down the road a mile, and we come upon the lake. And we come upon Lake George. It was like walking into Disney from the parking lot. Cars and buses and beautiful lakes and boats and arcades, and it was just a paradise.
Right away canceled their vacation plans for the next year to choose to stay in Lake George.
Next vacation, this is where we're coming.
We start going to Lake George, and we love everything about it.
Lake George became our happy place.
My dad and mom were not ocean and beach people. They were mountain and lake people. So we were introduced to the mountains and the lakes, and we looked so forward to, as being young, there was so much for us to do.
We'd go to a place called Frontier Town, which was an old western town, and the land of make-believe, and all these places that parents take their kids to.
Frontier Town and Gaslight Village, and just walking Canada Street, the main drag, and going out on the big boats on the lake, the Minnehaha and the Ticonderoga and the Mohegan, because we did them all. Fort William Henry, I mean, we saw all of it because year after year after year we would go.
And we would go down the village at night, and it was just, the next couple of years was beautiful. We really, really enjoyed it.
We had wonderful, wonderful times there.
And so as we started getting older, and then my sister Michelle came along, the moteling it, we just weren't getting enough of the Lake George experience.
We ended up in this place called Sun Castle, and they were villas on the water.
Villa 8, which is right on the water. It was beautiful. We'd sit out on the deck at night and watch all the boats go by, and the Minnehaha, we'd flash the lights and they would flash the lights back and put on. It was nice.
So now we started to bring our girlfriends. So my wife Sherry, her parents allowed her to go, but of course, everything had to be proper.
I fell in love with the mountains and the water and the smells and the pines, and the people. I fell in love with the people.
I'm pretty sure I went to Lake George every year from the year I met Mike right up till still going.
When we moved to the villas for our vacation, and then they started expanding it to 2 weeks, we rented a boat.
Michael and I went up to the lake before everybody else. And I said to Michael, let's go get the boat.
But she always went renting a boat. I was never a big boat man, never a big sailor.
When Lou came up with the rest of the kids, I got a great boat. With, I was driving it and standing up in it.
Well, I feel like chances are it's a little bit of a crazy boat, because Arlene loves crazy stuff.
And we went down to the pier, and the boat had sunk.
See a crowd down at the dock. What the heck is going on? We go down there, our boat sunk.
So Lou says, great boat you got.
I said, it's a safe boat, huh? This is safe. The boat was underwater. We had to call a towboat, tow it out, and call the marina. They sent us down another boat. And that was our safe boat.
The interesting thing about it, the 2 weeks that we'd stay in Lake George, Dad would only go for a week.
He would drive us up, unpack the van, set us all up, and he would go back for the week.
And then the last full week, he would take off from work and stay the full week.
But after, I guess it would be about 18 years of my life, they were able to buy their own home there.
Well, no way we're going to buy a villa. Yeah, no, we didn't have the money for that.
Affording anything on the lake there is extremely tough. Just the taxes alone are ridiculous.
We took a ride up Route 9 to Walton Landing. We said, I said to her, I do not want to go a quarter of a mile past this spot right here. And that was because the hill started and we were worried about the weather. If we bought something, we wanted to be free to come up in the winter.
So as they got to that point, they went through the little town of Bolton Landing. They said, we don't want to go any further. Let's turn around here. The driveway they turned around in had a for sale sign. And they ended up buying that house.
Next morning we went back up. And I said, hey, Arlene and I decided we want house number 7. He said, okay, put our name in. Gave us a contract. On your way home, he says, drop $1,000 at the realtor. $1,000? I ain't coming with $1,000. Just go down there and talk to him. So we went down, sure enough, I dropped that. I told the girl, I said, I got $100. She took it. We came home. We told the kids, and we went back up again.
So many great memories.
Lake George was an hour away from where my husband and I went to college. And every weekend, whenever my parents would come up, we would drive the hour and we would meet them there.
Having that Lake George house about an hour away from where we went to college was was nice to have. Something that close that we could go to if we needed to find a place that felt like home.
And it's nice that our children have such great memories of growing up at Grandma and Papa's house or as my family calls it, the George house.
It afforded us the opportunity to raise our children in Lake George, which was our second home.
Thinking about my childhood kind of goes hand in hand with thinking about Lake George.
Lake George is just such a love for me. I've never missed a summer up there in my 35 years on this earth and don't plan to ever miss one. I love it so much, and I feel so grateful that Grandma and Grandpa have kind of, started that tradition with their children and going up there.
Having that house in Lake George really created this space for the family to get together and be able to make all of these memories together.
I spent a lot of time in Lake George as a kid just because we had the house and we didn't have to rent anything. We'd come and go as we please because that's what Papa always wanted it there for. He wanted people to get use out of it.
Now with them having the house, everybody could go up whenever they wanted. My parents were so amazing with that place being the family's house.
A lot of the times everybody was there for the same amount of time and everybody was together, and there were certain things that everyone did together, going to the beach and going to get coffee and ice cream at Stewart's and, walking the village, and you could just count on that all the time. The younger that I was, I kind of took for granted how special it was that I had this time with my family, because again, I've come to realize that not everybody does have that, and not even just seeing their family all the time, but going on vacation with their family. Like that's a different thing, to have all your cousins and all your aunts and uncles and your grandparents all in the same place, but it's not, home. It's a vacation. It's like a second home, and that was always super special to me. And I think everybody loved Lake George and have always enjoyed it.
The memories of all being together and knowing that, like I said, not understanding that that's not what every family did, and knowing like not everyone had a room, not everyone had a space, but we were just all happy to be there and be together.
Those memories are they never leave, like the loft and all the sleepovers in the loft with our cousins.
Although it was not a huge house, we always found a way to make it work. Most of the time that was all of us younger kids sleeping up in the loft.
And there was bodies everywhere. Some were sleeping on the porch. Some were sleeping up in the loft upstairs. Each people got the bedrooms, the living room floor, all of that.
We would all pile up into the loft, and you had to be quiet because, if Papa went to bed or the parents are watching a movie down, but we could see down the TV. Like, we knew you were watching Dirty Dancing. We could see it the whole night. You just keep watching it. It's okay. It's what made my childhood. It's fine.
I remember even watching movies and Aunt Michelle and Aunt Lisa dancing in front of the TV at the not so good parts that us little kids shouldn't have been listening to.
There were a couple times after I got my license that I knew Grandma and Papa would be going up to the lake just themselves for the weekend. And I'd call up there and say, hey, you want some company? And Papa would always be like, you're welcome. Come on up. And we would just be up there, the three of us. It was always a place that I knew if they were up there, just them, I could get away from whatever craziness was going on in my life at that time. I always knew that even if they weren't home and I could go sit at their house with them, I could drive up to Lake George and be with them for however long I wanted. Papa would be like, we're leaving Sunday, but you can always stay if you want. We're going to dinner this night. You don't have to come, but if you would like to, here we go. The whole family up there was always a blast, but to have that time with just the three of us it's something that I won't ever forget. It's time I had with just them.
4th of July, everybody would be there. Even when my brothers and their families got their own place, 4th of July, we were always there together.
There happened to be a little bungalow falling down building next door on the lot next door. Dad and a couple of the other guys in this small little association that he bought his house in, they decided they want to buy that 1 acre to be able to put up garages and so forth and put a different driveway in. And but what are they going to do with this house? They're just going to knock it down. So I went up there with Sherry and we looked at the house, and I got talking with my brother Michael, and we made a deal with the other 5 owners of the property to become a 6th owner in this property, and that we wanted the house. And Michael and I, every weekend for I think 13 weeks straight, would run up there on Friday night or Saturday night and work on it all day Sunday, and made this beautiful little cabin for our 2 families because it was next door to Dad.
It literally was a cottage big enough for us to sleep because we were still going up to their house.
But now our family started to get bigger and the house kept getting smaller.
My family started growing. I knew I wanted to move into something bigger. And then all of a sudden, there's Dad again. Hey, Mike, I not using the house as much. You want to upgrade. If you would be interested in the house, let's work something out. It stays in the family. And then I always have a place to go. I never have to say that I ever got rid of it.
My son Michael bought that off of us. And it's good because we still have the key to the house and we can go anytime we want.
And so while they or anyone else in the family has been welcome to come there, times change, things change, but it's still, for us, it's our happy place. And again, it all goes back to Dad.
In my entire life, there would never ever be another place like Lake George for me, because this is what my parents started us with.
To be able to raise my family there was a gift I don't know that he realizes he gave to us.
When Lake George gets in your soul, it goes in so deep that you just can't get it out. And so how do you repay somebody for that? Another gift from this family that has done so much.
It's definitely a very special place he introduced us all to.
Lake George is a perfect example of how something as simple as picking a vacation spot can affect multiple generations. But there was one thing that he did for all of us grandkids that left arguably the most significant impact.
Papa collected $100 bills. Weird thing to collect, but he collected them and he folded them up really tight and kept them in his wallet.
When I seen that real crisp, nice $100 bill, I didn't want to spend it. So I used to fold it in half and then in thirds, and run my finger to seal it real tight, and I stick it in my wallet. I have 10 grandchildren. So we're all having dinner one Sunday afternoon. We're sitting there to celebrate my 75th birthday. And I said, to celebrate my 75th birthday, so I do something a little different.
Papa called us all into the dining room. All of us cousins sat at the end of the table where we normally would.
My grandfather asks for all of our attention, and he starts telling us a story. As he's fumbling through his wallet, he's telling us a story about how a lesson his dad always really taught him was about trying to provide to himself and make sure that all his debts were paid, and that he was always on top of providing for his family.
But I says, I'd like to give you all. I've been saving these $100 bills. And I gave every one of my grandchildren. They came to the table, I gave them a $100 bill.
It wasn't about the money, it was about the message that he was sharing with us.
And I said to them, you do whatever you want with it. It's yours to keep. I said, but if you want, put it in your glove box of your car. And don't spend it. You'll never, never be broke.
That lesson, that $100 bill, is you keep that $100 bill in a safe compartment in your wallet or wherever you keep it. And in the back of your mind, you may not know that it's there every day, but in the back of your mind, in a pinch, you'll remember it's there.
If you get stuck somewhere, you get a flat tire, your car breaks down, you have to call a tow truck, you always have money on you in case of emergencies.
Every once in a while it will come up and I'll be talking to someone about it, and I'll actually pull it out of my wallet, and people are like, oh my God, that's so cool. And the fact that you still have that. And I'm like, I will never spend this.
And still to this day, I have that in my wallet.
And I still have the $100 in the back of my wallet because, God forbid, my papa has me and it's there.
And I still have that in my wallet to this day. And there are days that we're kind of down and out, life is expensive and tough. And I'm always like, no, we're good because I still have this.
It's something that I just carried with me, and I still have that $100 bill clumped away in my wallet.
That stays in my wallet all day, every day, yet to touch it. And I hope that one day I could pass it down to somebody that I love and care about.
That just says a lot about his character and his willingness to kind of share with his family and share not only that $100 per person, but also his life stories and his experiences.
And then I gave it to my grandchildren in respect and recognition of my 75th birthday. And instead of getting a gift, I wanted to give a gift. And that's where it went to.
Papa giving us the $100 bills is one of the best examples of how he has impacted our lives without even realizing.
One thing that all the cousins have consistently talked about is the night that you gave us all the $100 bills.
Oh my God.
And believe it or not, every single one of them still has it.
Is that right?
What I found the most interesting was what he shared with me after he got done telling that story.
You left that significant of an impact on everyone.
Yeah.
It was...
and that hasn't entered my mind for a long time. Haven't thought about that. That's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
Hearing that solidified why I wanted to make this documentary, to give him the recognition he doesn't realize he deserves, not just for the $100 bills, but for everything.
Dad really taught me that there's times to be serious. There's times to use colorful language, and there's times not to. He taught me to be respectful. He taught me that it's important to honor women. He taught me that if you do the right thing all the time, only good things can come. He taught me that hard work is the best way to get ahead. Shortcutting might work, but it's going to be a short-term thing. If you work hard, if you do the right thing, you will earn the respect you deserve. You won't just get it because of your name or who you are.
He always had such a great reputation, no matter where you went, and you mentioned his name, people knew him. In my own life, I tried to emulate that. I tried to, be kind and do the best job that I can and go out of my way to help people if I can.
You are who you are, and you have a spouse, you get together with someone, and now You may change. You have to change. You can't be all about you. So it ends up being about you and your wife and now how you raise your children. But the basis doesn't change. The reason why you live where you live, vacation where you vacation, hobby, the things you hobby, and the people you hobby with. All of those things come from the beginning. They all come from, you know, your product of an environment, your environment, that loving, nurturing family and how you grow together.
I adore my husband. I love my son. I love my son-in-laws, not in-laws, my sons. But the original and most important man in my life will always be my father. There's never been a time he hasn't been there for me.
And there were little things here and there that he would do that would have such a huge impression on me. And one time I was traveling to Vermont and it was the winter time. And he would get so upset with me because I would wear little white sneakers with no socks. And he would always say to me, Michelle, put on some boots, put socks on. And I would say, Dad, I'm fine. But it's the winter time, your feet are gonna get cold. One day I was on my way up to Vermont and I passed him. So I pulled over. He turned around, he came back and he handed me he handed me a burgundy army blanket. And the interior of my car that he bought me was burgundy. And it was this thick wool army blanket. And he said, I wanted to get this for you and I want you to have it because I never want you to be cold. And while you're traveling, I want to make sure that your feet stay warm. So it's little things like that that are so kind of trivial, but I carry that blanket to this day in my car.
I think just having him in my life, period, was something that's made me or influenced a lot of who I am today. The experience, the way he treated family, the way he respects family, the value he puts on being there to help, being someone who sees a need of something that needs to be done and knows they're capable of doing it and can do it. I think those are things that, for me, I definitely have taken and learned from him, and just basically how to be a good person.
He, indirectly taught me a lot of stuff as just to be a decent human being.
It's great to see the effect that you can leave on people just by being a kind person.
I put Papa up on a huge pedestal. And the way he treats Grandma and the way he cares for our family and no questions asked, what do you need? I mean, even to this day, what do you need? You need me there? Okay. You need me here? Okay, no problem. Well, Papa, nope, I'm there. It's fine. Whatever you need, I'm there for.
One thing that always stood out to me was his, he would do anything for you. He'd literally give you the shirt off his back.
He's just always willing to help out, any way he can.
I always look up to him for his integrity. Always had a smile on his face.
Seeing him smile is just what makes me happy. Always makes me happy.
Papa always comes in with that just glow on his face, just smiling, how is everybody doing, How are things going, Dan? How's the job? How is this, and it's just always, he's just always just wondering and worrying and just loving and caring, and it's nice to feel that.
The big thing I take from him is how he cares about everybody and how he actually takes the time to stop and listen to what they have to say.
I feel so fortunate that I've lived close to him and I've been able to see him accomplish so much in his life too. And I think the biggest accomplishment, I would think he would agree with me, is his family.
I keep looking up to him and looking to be like him one day, because he has created such a family. I mean, it's really hard to come by the family that him and Grandma have created.
He has instilled this drive in me to have a family that wants to stick around.
And now being able to see the family that, he built and how close-knit everybody is together. And, I know that at any moment I could call on any of my cousins or uncles or aunts, and, they would drop anything to talk to me and, help me figure out whatever is going on. And I think that's something that he built.
Not only did it show me what a family could look like, it showed me what a marriage could look like. And when you stay extended time with somebody and you see that relationship on the day-to-day, and you see the respect there, and the love, and what family looks like, and then you start to feel that in your own relationship, you know what you're working for.
From the moment they met to now, has always been what I aspire my life to be, my family to be, my marriage to be.
And how they looked at each other. And again, the care that Papa gives everyone, but specifically Grandma. And I just knew, like, this is what I want to create. This is what I want to build.
He is extremely successful in everything he's done, in every aspect of his life. I aspire to be him. He's successful in his marriage. He's successful in the family that he's brought into this world. He was successful in business. He was an admired firefighter. He was an admired school board member. Just the things he did, the things he does, he's just so respected.
Probably the biggest thing that sticks out was for me was living up to my father's reputation, and above all, he had to be proud of me, no matter what.
Papa is just a very supportive grandfather to all of us, and he is just always so proud of us, no matter what we're doing. He was so proud of me when I was a student. He was just as proud of me when I was a server at Jumboland, and now he's just still so proud of me working at a university. So kind of no matter what we're doing, he just always has this pride and is just so proud of his grandchildren, and that reflects really well on us because we're able to say that we have such a proud grandfather.
Being able to grow up with somebody to look up to like that has just been an absolute blessing.
And I look up to him. I hope to be just like him one day.
Papa is the literally the best man. And what he has modeled is just so much love and care that you can literally see in every one of us. You can see him in every one of us.
He just has all these good traits that I feel like, every one of us in that he has spawned has traits of him, but not all of them.
The minute he walks in the door, he just makes you smile. It's like, oh, there's Papa. You hear his voice. It's like, oh, there he is. He's just so genuine. It's amazing. It really is amazing just how amazing of a man he is.
Super blessed to grow up around him and be able to call him my grandfather. It's just super amazing.
He definitely has put in a role in my life where I aspire to be, the parent that he has been.
I have just always loved how he loves and how he treats people, and he's one of my favorite people in the universe, and I love him.
I just love him to death, and I'm just so thankful to be part of this family. I would do anything for them as they would do for myself and Lisa, or any of our kids for that matter.
It's a true honor to be part of this family, and I hope, like I said, I hope one day to to be half the man that Grandpa is. So, and look forward to spending many, many more breakfasts, lunches, Sunday dinners, holidays with him, or just times when we're just, what you got going on? Want to take a ride? So, it's a total honor.
You can't really ask for a better grandfather than who Papa is.
I just love him so much, and I'm so grateful that God gave me this family and that he was the head of it.
I don't know what to say about the guy. He's awesome. I love him.
I think if everyone had a husband like mine, everyone would be happy.